Hello.
Hi, how you
Hi.
doing?
Hi, Ezra.
Hi.
Hear us?
Here we are promptly.
Yes, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah, very well.
Good. There's some loud air conditioner going, but that's good. You can hear me.
Um, First of all, we just want to say welcome, audience, and apologize to those of you who were planning on attending the event tonight in person. So far, we haven't had the dramatic weather that they've been predicting, but we didn't want to take any chances because the predictions were pretty like 2 inches of rain falling per hour or something. So we felt that by switching it online altogether, we get one advantage, which is we aren't wearing masks. And we can always also show some of the works. People on site would get to see all the works, but we can show some of the works to also the people, to everyone online now. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us tonight for this artist talk with Ezra Wube, whose current solo exhibition at the gallery Darkness continues through August 7th. We just extended it to August 7th, so you still have a few more days to come and see it. Thank you so much, Ezra, as well, for being here tonight with us, talking about your work, your show. And let me just read a bio because sometimes it's nice. Ezra Wube is an Ethiopian American artist. Wube is an Ethiopian American artist whose works frequently reference the notions of past and present, the constant changing of place, and the dialogical tensions between here and there. His works have previously appeared in exhibitions at the Africa Center, the High Line, the Fulton Street Transit Center, Times Square Midnight Moment, a studio museum in Harlem, Rush Art, and a museum moving image in Queens, New York. Ezra is currently
among others.
Among many others. Ezra is currently a resident at Macmillan, and he received an MFA in painting and combined media from Hunter College in New York. So thank you, Ezra.
So for people who haven't attended our artist talks before, we like to have conversations rather than scripted conversations. So we have questions that some of them we haven't had a chance to ask you, despite the fact of working with you, not only for the show, but previously in the events that we did with you. But we'd like to start with talking about the exhibition and the works in the show. So currently, if you look behind us, we're not there, but that's an exhibition shot of your solo exhibition, which features 2 single-channel videos projected, 1 video installation, and several works of a photographic analog digital series that you have done and completed in a different way for the show. So the title is Darkness, which is the title of one of the works in the show, your latest work. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about just the term itself.
First of all, I would like to say thank you very much, Microscope Gallery, for the exhibition opportunity and having me on the talk. And thank you everyone for joining in for the talk as well. It's really a pleasure being here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just talk about the how I came about to the piece Darkness, which was about a year ago. I contacted by a curator I work with, and the curator contacted about 30 artists, each artist assigned to like a specific word. And the curator used algorithm, like a system to like randomly select the artist. And I happened to like get the lottery of the word darkness. And I thought it was very strange. I was almost like nervous to do work about it, because it's just really odd. Like that sort of, that word kind of selected me out of others, 30 other words that I still feel like maybe it's a good challenge, as an artistic challenge, kind of taking up on something like really broad, and it's also ambiguous, and sort of kind of confronting it, and how to come about this word, and how to, there's so much kind of suggestion to what the word could mean, and how could I sort of take it down from the pedestal and just I could explore it. Yeah, and I thought about like one way how I came about thinking about the process was maybe to just like to kind of thinking about like how darkness is usually associated to like you almost can't find like a clear definition of like what darkness is. It says it could be applied to an object, an idea, whether it's like literal, abstract. And I thought maybe the word might be like a good idea to approach and kind of sort of structure the project. And what darkness could be, right? Darkness could be dark fabric, or dark idea, or dark thinking, thoughts, or it could be all these multiple ideas. And I thought about maybe structuring it with a compound word. So I used the just alphabetical order from like from A to Z, and I thought it's also interesting to use a coin language like English, and then sort of like search that this kind of universal language, what you would find, and then I also didn't want to just grab image from the search engine, so I decided to look for images that are royalty free or copyright free. So it makes them more like, these images are uploaded to the World Wide Web, but like generously, like people uploading it. So it's not like, so I don't want to be like a pirate, like taking away, appropriating it. So I just like the idea, just kind of using something somebody else put it on, but totally depending on their generosity. You could use it, you don't need to credit it and stuff like that. So yeah, I just searched and I found like hundreds and hundreds of images, from going like dark A, then dark B, and then dark C, just going all the way to Z, and finding all these associated images from these compound words. And I had all these words and images, and then I sort of like, because of the suggestion, like what darkness could be all these broad associations, which a lot has to do with, I feel like, our human projection about it, our ideas. It's more than what it is. So I was thinking about like just sort of distorting the words into like ambiguous like shapes. So I decided to use a cell animation, which is like a frame by frame animation technique where you just kind of drawing each shapes, and then sort of from taking the words and then slowly changing it to ambiguous, anamorphous, like an unknown shape. And sometimes it disappears, sometimes transforms to some other word. Yeah, and I just kind of work on that. And then I inserted the images I inserted the image. I use what's called a still animation, which is like using flashes of images. So it's a combination of still animation and cell animation, where the words, text, and the shapes are cell animation, and then using the still image, because I feel like all these gathered images is just a way to use it. So still animation kind of really made sense. So kind of combining it, collaging it. Yeah, and it's really almost like by chance how the image I found has the chance possibility, like could have been any image. Sometimes it could be related, sometimes totally unrelated. I might just you might find image of something, maybe it doesn't really say the word, but I find that really intriguing. Sometimes it doesn't have any associations, but it just there's a random chance, but somehow it's associated to the word through the search engine. So that's how I come about. And then and eventually I have to have that images. Usually I don't really put any sound or some music on my videos. I usually use like ambient sound, part from like field recording, part using like sound effects. But I just I'm like, oh, maybe I should kind of make it more like because of there's a visual rhythm that was happening from the still images, and I just try to play around with GarageBand and kind of make up some sound. But I'm not a musician, but so it's not quite in sync, the rhythm and stuff like that. But I thought it was fine, and then just gonna work with that.
So also, I think unless I'm mistaken, when you did the search, like you search for dark A, and then you pick kind of the top word that showed up in the Google search also, or whatever search you used, you know, kind of, right? Like you didn't decide, oh, dark A, what's the word that I know? Didn't you do something with the search also for the words themselves for each letter?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely a support of help from the search engine. Like, you know, you write a letter A, it suggests what it kind of finishes for you. So yeah, just definitely using that resource, and then whatever images that comes across from it, and then I just downloaded the images. No, that's right.
Because it's kind of interesting, you know, in that way. But you were also, okay, so do you want to say a little bit about the negatives versus and also the alpha and the omega concepts that you're thinking about?
I just, you know, I watch all the, you know, PBS Nova documentaries about science and stuff. You know, I find it really fascinating. I was just thinking about like literally like darkness as in like a constant presence. Like, let's say we are in a room. If there is a light entering, and then you see lights. If there is no light, there's darkness. Or there's the sun is, you know, there's a sun. There's like light, and then there's no sun. There's the darkness. Actually, there's always darkness. It's sort of kind of masked by the light. So I was thinking about like light also as in like light as an energy, and then that's when light is introduced to let's say, you know, before Big Bang or something like that. You know, it's like nothing or vacuum, and then light happening, and then sort of event and which light kind of occupying space, making it time, has energy has time, and then occupies a space. It's like a time and place sort of invented by the presence of light. And when the energy goes out, the consistent, the fixed presence is like darkness. So that's what I was thinking about, like the idea of like beginning, ending, is like sort of like darkness, like how is it always consistent presence in a space?
I think perhaps it would be helpful to watch a little excerpt from Darkness.
This piece itself is very short. It's very dense, but we shouldn't give it all the way, I don't think.
A short excerpt.
Yeah. We went a little longer than.
That was just a
action.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's. Okay. So.
Something I was thinking about is you usually make very complicated compositions with paint or other materials, and you shoot frame by frame every composition you make. And in this case, I guess it was a little different in that you use appropriated images. And I wonder how that was different. The process of making the work was different for you in this case compared to your previous works.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, answer. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say it's yeah, it's definitely different from the other ones. But yeah, but I think I thought it was interesting the idea also like sort of searching the engine and kind of finding resources. So if I want to incorporate that, one way to do it would be I would project it and then draw on top of it, or just insert it like the way I did it. But I also really wanted to like really morph the text into like different shapes. So I just felt like it was more. I was also actually I was on a camping trip. There was no like internet or stuff like that. I had this like notebook and then I could just like only draw. So I did the drawing part on a camping trip, kind of away from everything, which is really interesting. And then eventually, going back and then like editing on a computer. So it was very just it was more convenient because if I do the other process, I would need a fixed studio space and I would need like my materials and stuff like that. But this one I was traveling, so I could do it anywhere I go. It was just drawing this like write the text and drawing the morphing the shapes, and just sort of like without having any like I was just having any space. I was doing it on a bus or like in different places. So there's a conveniency about I had to do the work in a specific period, so it was just more convenient for what I was doing.
Did you also shoot them like stop motion?
Stop motion, yeah, like I've after I completed just the drawing, so it was like a pile of drawings, and then I came back to the city and then just photographed, but I used Sharpie. I just deleted and then I selected all the background and the foreground, like all the white surface, and then only just the black line kind of end left over, and then I just overlaid on a layer on top of the photo. So I did a couple of rounds, so that's why you could get the background, like one image, and then the foreground has another image. That's kind of see through the text. There's a couple of editing process, but yeah, there's like photography and then like manipulation of the photo in Photoshop to have just like to delete the background surface.
Just for the audience, the stop motion, I mean, you have to shoot 30 frames per second, right?
Yes, it really depends. I would say it's like some movement needs more frames. Some movement like needs less frames. Like they say like a way like a flame is moving or a way a clock is moving. Like like you have an analog clock. It's sort of like you need less frame. It just goes like 1 frame, 2 frame, 3. And a flame is because it's very active, and you will need like more frames because of how active the scene is. So yeah, it's quite intuitive. I don't have like a set like a standard of working, but it's just I respond to it as I work.
So maybe it would be good to rewind a little and get back to maybe the evolution of your practice.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing about this piece, and then we can move. Just one thing I wanted to say. You were saying you decided to do these searches, and I think that makes this piece kind of a record in time, because you were searching for alphabetical letters of, whenever you made this piece, what were the images that showed up under those words, these compound words, dark age, dark beer, dark duck. And who knows how that will evolve, yeah? Yeah,
it's collaboration between human and machine. Right.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought about it. Right, just kind of recording. Right, if I would search right now, it would be a different algorithm, or different images. Maybe some of them exist, some of them don't exist anymore. That's interesting. Yeah, so it's very time specific in that way.
I was just saying, maybe it would be good to understand how, concisely, really, how you start working with stop motion. When did you think that was the way your artwork was going take shape through, coming from painting, I'm assuming, and how that came about, the stop motion animation.
Yeah, it was really gradual. Like I was, painting, as like it's like I feel like it's like an identity, right? There is this lots of romanticism about it, the canvas, the easel, the paint. There's so much association and identity, and you working on it, like developing a skill. So I never imagined to do something else, just only painting. I was just painting like daily. I had lots of paintings. But I never like to see my paintings after I finished. I just never wanted to see them, but I just still kept paintings. But I did some video interviews for a project in 2004. Was like for actually the folklore project. I interviewed individuals. So I just learned figuring it out, just documenting and lots of camera work. And I became really, really fascinated with video because painting is very sort of like something kind of, I always kind of mysterious about it in a way. Like within the process, I have to give my back to the world, like face a wall, and like me and my imagination always. But video was like something about going to life and documenting like this interaction, the experience of it. It was so vivid, and it really made me think about it, the intensity of it, and also. It's just the conveniency, like there's a sound, movement, all these things. And if something doesn't work, it's just easy to delete it. Like working specifically, my first introduction to film video was always digital. I've never done analog. So, but as in digital, there was all this, like I could be as playful as I wanted. And I was very free of like an object. It's like objectlessness other than the tool to make the work. The actual work doesn't have any like a physical matter. And I found that really, really also very freeing. Almost every year I was living in different apartments, moving around, and asking friends like where to store my paintings. It was really stressful. It really didn't work out was what I wanted to do. But eventually I somehow like kind of playing around painting and photography. One of my studio space, my apartment, I could touch both walls with 2 arms. It was very small. But I really wanted to paint a lot, and I just had lots of process. Also migrating, coming to the US, and this like lots of newness, and I have all this new inspiration, new information. I just wanted to paint, like just because my creative process is also where I process information. I wanted to process experiences, and painting was felt very precious and very sacred, and this object. And then, so eventually I started doing that, but still in graduate school, I remained a painter. I resisted my professors. I'm like, I'm a painter, you build up so much identity to it. So it's almost like a shift of identity from kind of growing up in a one like household all my life until I came to US. Like it's kind of fixed place. I always lived in one home. And then painting as being like time and place and static and fixed. And then moving to US, like movement, mobility, like experience of like pluralism, other cultures, influences. And yeah, video really, I felt like video was like a way to like really explore all these ideas. Also like, historically not keep going, stop me if I keep going. Also, I feel like there's also there's like a historical burden to painting as well. Like there's a history to it, but I feel like in video was this as a new medium. I didn't really have that burden of trying to like find my historical alignment as also someone being an outsider entering to the art history here in the West. I couldn't just it wasn't quite true for me to try to do a painting. But video, I found more leeway to it. Eventually, like this art painting animation, I feel like it was like a meeting ground between my past experience and my present experience.
That's kind of interesting, just brief, because you at some level are talking about displacement. When you became an American citizen, you had to give up your Ethiopian citizenship. Jonas Mekas, who's a diarist, filmmaker, no longer with us, but he found when he came here as a person who, he only spoke Lithuanian when he arrived in the country, but he was a poet, and instead he took up imagery, film, as his poetry, because he felt that that was a more universal language than all these languages we have that not everyone speaks. So just there's a relationship, I think, in an interesting way.
It's also interesting, this idea of video as something that kind of frees the artist from, physical constraints, and it doesn't have a physical reality, and therefore ties and with social political problems. I mean, it just frees the artist from time and space at some level. It's really interesting how it's connected to mobility as well for an artist who has to move around a lot.
So
I have a question that's kind of crazy. Do you ever, because you make compositions that you shoot with your camera, and then compositions are gone, no?
Yes, I usually use a single surface, like just I work the same surface again and again. Right, it's I think that's also what interests me too. The process makes me very present, and not in that specific moment. And I know it's going to be gone. I'm going to change it. So I'm more like committed to that specific moment. Makes me more committed to it, and just do the best of it, get the best out of it, and then just change it. Eventually, kind of building up. There's an urge to do something new, and there's an urge to change it. Like there's this like cycle, which was a totally different approach from when I was doing painting. So yeah, there's definitely makes me more present to that specific process, because of my own past and present like fragmented like sense of belonging. It's painting was kind of more more romantic, and it's just and in a way like it's kind of in a way of like some sort of escapism or something like that. But the action of the animation process of like just to really work on that ephemeral idea makes me more like really react to it. It makes me more aware, more present in a way, something like that.
Do you ever think like when you're about to erase or destroy this thing, the composition you have made, do you ever think, this is beautiful, what am I doing?
No, because he's not making paintings.
Right.
That's what you explained to us. You're not making paintings. You're making.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Never happened.
Yeah. I just like I feel like it's every painting or every painting animation, a process like figuring out. That's what I think about. I'm figuring out, resolving something, and then if it's resolved, it's just resolved. That's really how I think about it. I have zero attachment to it, like zero. It's the best part of it after I finish my animation process, just to throw out the last canvas. Like it's just so freeing, because I'm dealing with it for days and days. So you're dealing with the same material. There's like presence to it in the space too. So eventually that when it's just starting something new. I don't have that attachment at all. I struggle first, always try to get that, like work it out, like work the composition. Sometimes it doesn't quite work, and just kind of work with it for a while, and then once it's resolved, that was it. Of course, it's documented, so it's sort of it's like the between the space stage, or it's like it's been documented, and then the next thing after.
So maybe we'll move on to the animation. I mean, they're all animated in different ways, but maybe we'll move on to one that really clearly demonstrates this. But first, I just want to say to the audience, because we should have said this at the opening, below the window that you're watching for the talk is a chat. It's a moderated chat, so if you think of questions that you want to ask for the Q&A that will follow, you can write them anytime. They're not going to show up until we start posting them. So we don't want you to lose your good questions if they arise during the course of the conversation. So second projected video in this piece is called, the Italian should speak it.
Una favola vera, a true fairy tale.
And you have done other works where you dealt with animations of Ethiopian fairy tales. This piece is not a fairy tale, it's a true, well, you call it a true fairy tale. Do you want to say something about your motivation for this piece, which is dealing with the occupation of Italy during
Ethiopia.
sorry, the occupation of Ethiopia by Italy during World War II?
Yeah, it's definitely. I haven't really explored. I would say I've done a similar project with another architect collaboration, like indirectly relates to it, but directly kind of relating with the subject. It's the first time doing it. It's interesting. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was invited to do a video projection piece for the Wolfstonian Museum, and part of the project was like to use the resource from the museum. It's a part of the Florida University, so they have all this collection libraries, like extensive amount of materials, and I didn't know like where to start. It's just so many information. But I was informed they had lots of materials about the Italian occupation of Ethiopia. And when I looked at the library, I spent there for I think about a couple of weeks. There was all these materials. I was just blown away. It was so many information. So I looked at all these materials. There some are like postcards, packagings, like mass-produced calendar, booklets, books, posters, pamphlets. But these are like used as a political propaganda device for the invasion of Ethiopia during the fascist Italy. It's World War II. So the war is expensive. So it's just probably like Mussolini was trying to like get like voice support on it for the invasion. So I had the material, but I was just like to a new subject. I didn't went ahead did the project. I just like I did something else for that specific installation. But during the pandemic, like kind of stay in my own apartment, and just when was advised to stay in, and I just really sort of like out of boredom, just I remember like having those references, but most of my work also tend to be like autobiographical, or sometimes I would do like collaborative community work. So there's this kind of so rewarding kind of experience to it. Sometimes I'm doing like collaborative, but this one was not. It was really hard, like uncomfortable, images, but again, it was like similar, like the darkness. I feel like I should not be afraid of it, and just sort of kind of sort of like look at it and try to wrestle with it. So I decided to work on the project, and a way like an escapism, and also to make me stay inside my apartment for the a couple of months pandemic period, spring 2020. And I decided to use plasticine, which I've never used before, but because working in my own apartment, I needed more like safe materials. Paint is more toxic, so I use like plasticine. It's very clean, and it's not as toxic. So just kind of work with it. First time using it, but also part of it was interesting because for like the title, for example, Ana Favola Vera. It's actually a children illustration book title. Was based on the life of Mussolini. It was a book for the children. So there was also, it was part of the research I found. So that's what I used the title. This idea of like romanticism, and I was thinking about like romanticism also as in being like touch would be like some sort of desire or something like that. So working with plasticine, there's a lot of touch, and there's something very like a desire about it. And also also like plasticine, like, Play-Doh was something for children, like, children use that for playing, and it's like a playing. So I was thinking the idea of like something playful but serious at the same time. And then sort of kind of working with that, this idea of like, failed like romanticism, which in a way initially was kind of slowly, slightly inspired to my own experience of like from a failed project I had. There was a lot of an animation that reference to the failed project. Like suddenly, sometimes you would see reference to my own failed project within this huge, big subject.
Maybe we can show a little excerpt so people know what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
For those who haven't seen the show yet, because it's hard to have any idea. People think sometimes of plasticine as like claymation, and this is not what you're doing in this piece.
Right, I'm using a painting language.
Yes.
Oggi, 5 maggio, alle ore 16, alla testa delle truppe vittoriose, sono entrato in Addis Abeba. Ciao piccolino, ciao. Al popolo italiano e al mondo che la pace è ristabilita.
Wow.
Just a reminder to everybody that what you're looking at is like basically Play-Doh.
It's amazing, like the color tones. I mean, the mixing of the colors you are able to get through this Play-Doh. I mean, something. I mean, I would never think you could get something out of it like that.
Well, that's actually a question. Did you mix these colors yourself?
Some of them you actually could find them just that color, but yeah, you could also mix them. You just have to. Sometimes when I wanted like a subtle color, you just eventually, when you need it, you could find another color. Like if you want to make it lighter or darker or something like that.
Do you think this is a? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have questions about this, so please put them in your question. We want to ask all the questions possible. But do you think this is a medium you'll explore further, or was this something that worked with this piece, given the connection with fairy tale and children, and that's your exploration? I mean, this is a almost 9-minute piece. It's extremely huge amount of work.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not quite sure. I'm just really more thinking in a moment. I'm interested in other projects right now, but maybe I might have some idea. I mean, one thing is I have to figure out a way maybe to work standing, because I usually work standing for my painting animation. The working on a table is really difficult for me. It's just the way the perspective I look at it, and the perspective of the camera, like the bird's eye view overhead shot, it looks at it usually different. Also, and I try to compromise by kind of working closer, and like it really hurts my back. It's the process. If there's a way I could work out making it like working, I think it's possible to work vertically, like standing on a wooden board or something like that. But maybe but it's definitely I feel like I could use it in the future, but I'm not quite sure which project.
That's actually another question we want to talk about. Despite the fact that a lot of your animations are oil paint, actually we don't have any of those in our exhibition. We have darkness, which will involve these different techniques. We already talked about this one, and then the third piece is the installation piece that I don't think it involves oil paint, but it's not your typical, your more typical say. But then we were thinking about some other pieces that you have, which also are not using paint. There's some animations you've used actually with objects. And so I think this idea is probably not true about your work, that it's always on a canvas and painting, because there's many exceptions. Do you want to talk a little bit about material?
I would say I always come around to like use paint on canvas. Something I've probably have done more. But definitely I've incorporated food or dirt or different kind of materials, or like really objects. Just spending some time at the 99-cent store getting all these like lots of little materials and like use that. And I think it's just there's definitely there's a narrative of the object, using object in the work. Like there's a directness of an object. Painting is more like imaginative because it's kind of constructing this imaginative world. But like using objects as it's more like a collage aspect of it, like directly, seeing like a carrot inside of an animation. So the real carrot, it's very, very authentic in a way. So yeah, it depends on the project. I use if it's tend to be more, it's kind of more imagination based. I end up going back to painting because I feel more comfortable working that way. But yeah, sometimes I depart and work with other materials. It depends on the project. I would say I've used maquettes before for project and collage photos and stuff like that, fabrics and.
Yeah, actually, there are some photographic works in the show, so maybe we should talk about them right now before we get to the installation piece. The series is called Palindrome, but for anyone who's seen the works, which we'll show an example, why don't we show one first, if it's clear. Well, I'll just keep talking while he pulls one up, that they're not actually palindromes. And are you showing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you make it maybe a bit?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're showing 3 from the series, and these are UV prints on aluminum. And this is the one I was going to say Ezra's in them, but this is the one where it's least obvious because you're behind the mask in this piece. Can you say something about your idea of palindrome that's not a palindrome? The wishful idea of yes, and yeah.
I think it probably happens, to most people like moves, between places, from smaller scale, we're moving from a city to a countryside or countryside to a city, or between cities or, between countries or geographies. There's this sense of like, you have this experience and then you leave it, and then you go a new place, and then you have, you're building a new narrative. And then you sort of like, there's a fragmentation of like past and present. You're not updating your past, so your past becomes more imaginative in a way. Actually, after I've read the comment, what's called the imaginary homeland becomes like imaginary homeland. It's not even like the real homeland like that was experienced, but it's more like the imagined homeland. Especially like migrants kind of inventing this like imaginary homeland of a past homeland. It's sort of it's kind of like romantic, and it's almost like there's other memories kind of altered to it, and then in the new space, in the new place, and there's excitement to of learning new elements, and new everything. There's also like a rootlessness, like not having a root, but there's also like a sense of freedom from kind of departing from a cultural burden. From being from one specific place, there's a cultural norm to it, and then once someone moved, that demand of norm is no longer imposed. So the kind of working between this like longing and sense of like freedom, from the relief of like this cultural burden. And this kind of going back and forth, but not be able to fully I have lots of issue writing English. I went to higher education, and I matured in the States. I went to college and everything, higher education, but I have a lot of issues with like prepositions when I write, because I don't have that basic like elementary study here. But also my Amharic is actually very elementary because I didn't go higher education. So there's that kind of fragmented. Also, like Ethiopia used the Julian calendar, which is like 7 years behind. That's like the official calendar. Moving to the States was literally, time was like there was years that kind of vanished. I never like lived. Was when I moved here was 91, and there actually was 98. There was 7 years. I don't know what happened to them. It's kind of gone. That switch of time. And when I had my Ethiopian passport, I used to have 2 birthdays, different months, different day, and different year. There's this two-ness, as in like place, and then time and belonging, like being really influenced, really adapting here, and then also not being like rooted, but I guess this is like a few years old work as an idea. But in this piece, I was really exploring that idea of like two-ness, as in like time and belonging, or also like narrative. So that's why I was using like book pages as in like a narrative, like a page, like two pages would have like one side, a page behind are like the past, and then the present page and the future pages are kind of coming ahead. So I was just thinking about like this, like past and present, and using like textual color. Like usually texts are like black and white. Like you have like whether it's blackboard and white chalk, or you have white paper and then black types or text. So working kind of these two colors too, in a way, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just kind of processing information too. I don't have quite precise idea what it's about, but like things kind of made sense to me at the moment. It's kind of the book page and working with this black and white, and then incorporating objects. Like there's like some of the rocks you can see in the photographs that I collected traveling around different countries. I have like 20, 30 different rocks from different countries. I mean, maybe 20, 30. Yeah, but like 20, like from different regions. So stuff like that I incorporated. So it's just part of this kind of floating, belonging, and stuff like that.
I mean, there's so many layers in these works to see them. I mean, you can see them fairly well on a flat screen, but in person, it's even more clear. People are constantly trying to figure out what's going on here in terms of what are they looking at, because they see you on both sides, right? So that means probably digital. There is some digital melding, they assume, but then you've got these layers that happen in front of you, sometimes behind you. There's objects. So it's really an analog. I'm not asking you to tell everything that you do. That's not what I'm asking.
It's a mystery.
But just explaining that you're using all these techniques of layering and collaging within a physical space, basically, with a painting in front of a painting, in case people don't understand that is actually pages of the books. Yeah, they're really beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's the digital aspect would be like erasing, because I would take myself in different places within the canvas, like the image behind, and I would and then just overlap the photos, and I would erase out part of it, so I would appear different places. That's really how I made it. But I actually had to take like lots of photos, because some of the stuff I was suspended with a thread. They spin, and from like, you know, wind or like very subtle movements, and it was hard to get them all like static. There was all these pieces that kept moving, and I take many pictures eventually, whichever one is more like static. And so I probably took like a couple hundred photos, like many photos, to get the like everything static, everything suspended, and like, you know, I had this, so everything analogically, everything's constructed physically in a space, and they kept moving, and like from, you know, the wind and just from my body wind and stuff like that. Yeah, so it was lots of holding and then just really trying to get this precise moment, and then sometimes to, you know, kind of try to take the best out of it in a way.
There is this feeling of suspension of time, of meaning. They're trying to reach a unity out of this two-ness that is in the piece, and trying to, I guess, reach new meanings through this climate of uncertainty you're creating, trying to attain new meanings. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel, yeah, I mean, definitely it's again kind of not having it's so binary, like having that idea as a way to sort of to challenge that binary. It's not like this or that, or it's constructing, and then also like defining it, like by, you know, switching things around and fragmenting it more, and see what happens. And usually it's kind of, you know, guess what happened, a kind of experiment, and you know, try also to use you know, belongings, objects in my surrounding as like a prop, like stuff I use like day to day, like could be like for dry ice, you know, eye drop or stuff like that, incorporating this mundane elements, but they're that I interact physically with them, like every day, like the simple things, stuff like that. Also kind of try to find like meaning to it with other settings.
You know, and the other piece in the show, which is your video installation, Shoes Box, which maybe we should just show at this point so people can understand why he also is another work that picks up some of these same themes, which are repetitive themes also in, not so much like this one, but the idea of home here and there, past and present, are extremely mixed in Peace Shoes Box. Do you want to show it? I don't think we need to talk about it. We're getting down to like the last 8 minutes or something, 10 minutes of the conversation. So I'd rather, I think.
If someone has any questions.
Yeah, and people are starting to send questions, so that's good. Before we open it up officially, but let's show a little bit of this piece. It's a video installation.
Video projection onto several, I think 6 boxes made of foam core. Let's watch it. Sorry.
Just stop. I mean, that's fine. We wanted to show a little bit of the side view where you can see that you have cut out in a couple of the boxes.
Yeah.
These are actually shoebox size boxes. They're not. I mean, the size is really the size of a shoebox, so people can see it.
And that was actually the installation. That was a recording of the installation in the space. Not a video, the document. This piece is from 2018. Just I want to say that all the works in the show have never been previously exhibited in New York. And this was a show. This was a piece that is only shown in your studio before.
Yes.
If you want to explain a little bit, I mean, people have read the press release, but if you want to say a little bit more about the combination of animation, home movie, and home, or whatever you want to talk about, actually, whatever more you want to say, but those were the three things we had talked about a little.
Okay. Yeah, it's the piece. It was sort of like, after I had an experience where visiting the house I grew up became like a small shoe factory, which I wasn't informed. And I really had like a big surprise, and to see on the bedroom when I grew up, I slept for 18 years. People just getting busy nailing shoes and burning things and stuff like that. It was like such a shock. The kitchen, everything, every space was just used to produce shoes, and just a stock of shoes everywhere. And it was just like a really it's strange because it's being raised. My grandmother, she passed away, so I actually didn't feel like I felt like she there was something more exciting about the experience, because it was more like a grief feeling. But now to see new stuff happening in the space, I find that kind of like a relief in a way. Like there's a new life, new narrative. But it really had like a kind of a dream-like experience, because in dreams you have unassociated events, sort of collage sometimes. How in dreams you're doing something else in a different space, it make no sense. Like really felt that way, like having like a shoe factory, like in my house I grew up. It was really strange. All the courtyard and everything is like just getting really busy. So yeah, I just wanted to process that and that experience. And then I had all these videos, documentation, like personal documentation, like friends, family, all different places I lived. And I wanted to kind of think about that. So yeah, the idea of the shoes box came from the house I grew up turning into like a shoe factory. And I just thought about like shoes also like an object we wear. It's an object of mobility, so we wear shoes to move around. And then a box could be like referring to like a home or something like that. But the shoe relationship with the box is very temporary, right? Because shoe don't stay in a box; they're only there like for a temporary period. So I was just thinking about like this temporary state, and then also like a shoe. It's something very human, and that's people wear for like a device of like mobility or something like that. And yeah, and I just I wanted to use like actual shoes box, but the ratio and stuff like that. So I ended up constructing it myself. But the process was, before I constructed the installation object, first I had to make the animation, which was I was playing video on loop of my personal videos and from like life experience on a monitor. And then I had this cutouts of elements, abstract shapes or figures and stuff like that, kind of attaching it on a TV on the monitor and creating like a second layer of image. And then I had a third, which is a projecting video on top of the animating objects on top of the monitor. There's 3 layers. I wanted that kind of threeness, like it's more challenging than like being more like binary, like the video and the imagination. But the projection kind of brings another like third layer. And yeah, just like a really small thing, such as like the type of music I used to listen to, like when I was just remembering what I used to listen to, or stuff like that, like combination of these audios and like day-to-day, like, you know, like video documentations, like some photos, sort of collage it together. And then eventually, you know, decided like to construct the shoebox like objects, and then to project in it. So sort of kind of like creating like a container for the video in a way.
Yeah, it's really nice. And all these pieces are very different from each other. They're
I mean, this is very
but
complex.
they're all yours. You know, each one has its special thing. You know, and then
Magic. And it's
Thank you. You're
like
very generous.
very dreamy. Yeah.
well, you were also telling us, and maybe you can say more a little bit before we open up to the audience about. So, for example, these are based off real places you've lived, but the footage drifts. So it's not like one box is one home and one box is another home and one box. Yeah.
Yes, they do. They move around. Yeah, because I feel like it's there's a fixed idea, and then our memory is actually not fixed. It's very like malleable. It moves around. Sometimes I'm not quite sure like what I experience in a way. Maybe I was just thinking that sometimes also things kind of experiences bleed from one belonging experience. Might might continue to the next experience, or sometimes it might be like you know, just I'm still getting a mail on one's address I no longer live, or something like that. You still have this connection to it through people, or through like just basic, like, you know, like such as mail, or stuff like that, or just, you know, memories or something like that. Yeah, so they're not quite fixed. The projection on it, sometimes they move around because of that reason. But I did like, but I, you know, so I selected the 6 different places that I lived, and that's why I constructed, you know, the 6 different like boxes kind of piled up together. So yeah, that was the idea.
Okay.
So we should start getting some questions from the audience online right now. Are coming through. Eric Theise says, no questions really, but I visited the gallery a few weeks ago while in New York and sat through 2 or 3 cycles of Una Favola Vera. Extremely beautiful, Ezra.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Comment. And Bradley Eros says, I'm curious if, in relation to your darkness piece, you knew of the story from the autobiography of Malcolm X, where Malcolm is in prison at the time and he decides to examine all of the definitions and association of the word black in the dictionary, most of which he perceived as negative connotations, to question the social meanings of a word that he identified positively. Since darkness also has negative and positive association for most people, thus challenging the binary perception of black and white, light and darkness.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, I'll look into it. Very interesting. I didn't know.
Next one.
Aina says, I'm looking forward to seeing your work in real life.
Great. Please do.
Yes, everyone who is in New York or is passing by New York before August 7th, the works obviously are much
it's a different experience.
Greater experience to see them in real life. Any other questions?
If you have any questions or comments for Ezra, please send them through the live chat.
Or suggestions.
Seems like maybe we talked. Oh, there's some more.
Let's wait a second because sometimes it takes a little while.
In the meantime, we don't have to stop. and pause here. There was one thing that I'm not sure that we thought about a little bit.
Well, there is another question in the meantime from Carlton. Is there a thread of threads running through the videos in the stacked installation, meaning shoes box?
Is there what? Sorry, a thread?
A thread? Oh, a thread or threads. Is there a thread basically running through the videos in the stack in shoes box?
No.
Like a thread, like a narrative?
Yeah, I guess like, yeah.
I would say they're more like a collage of like events rather than like narratives. It's more like just like experience. There's no really like a clear like narrative, a thread of narrative.
I mean, that's actually interesting because you said you used home video footage, and it's just everything's flashing by, like little flashes of memory combined here and there. It's not like you sit and watch and could register. Like we couldn't sit and watch and register a home movie scene necessarily, right? And it really is like a dream, or memories just colliding.
Oh, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Carlton said, okay, there's another question from Kibron. I can't wait to see the show in person. I'm a big fan of your work. We also grew up in a similar area in Addis, so I can relate with the shoes box piece.
He's also a friend.
Yeah.
A friend artist and animator too.
What filmmakers, artists have inspired you when you were young? From Owen.
Filmmakers, I would say my influence. I mean, I grew up watching this like 70s film, space like a science fiction film. It's called Space 1999. Even if I grew up in the 80s, but somehow in Ethiopia we had a TV show from the 70s. But I was running like every Thursday. So and then the whole science fiction. I still really admire science fiction films, and it was the whole idea of like they had a station on the moon, and then something happened, and they had to they couldn't their station at the base at the moon, some mistake happens, they couldn't use it anymore. So they're on this journey. So the whole episode is just like they're people in a spaceship just going from like planets to planets and different like all these like this journey. It was like it was really amazing show for me at the moment. I don't know what I would think right now when I was a kid. So yeah, it was really fascinating. I don't know if you guys are familiar to it. I think it's a British TV show, if I'm not mistaken, but like Canadian and British like collaboration. So yeah, I would say that's probably one of my earliest influence, and this idea of like this like journey and experience, and like almost every episode like they would encounter like a new species and like a new world or something like that. So had all these like surprises.
Aina also suggests that she's saying that there is a scene in Malcolm X by Spike Lee where the idea of black as a definition is illustrated with text. That's interesting. Thank you, Aina.
Thank you. Interesting.
And then Jeannie Leota says, lovely work. I'd love to hear what artists inspire you personally. I can't help but think about William Kentridge when thinking of animation work that is in flux and erased as drawings to make animations, etc.
Yeah, I find lots of artists really. I mean, it's lots of artists. I don't have like a specific artist I follow up, but when I was in grad school, I was always referred to Kentridge because of the erasure process. But I don't know. I mean, where to start? But there are just so many incredible artists, contemporary artists. I'm always like blown away. I try to do like at least every like twice a week or something, or twice a month or so, to just really experience other artists. And there's so many brilliant artists out there. But when I grew up, like it's our influences were very different. I would say my whole understanding of like modern art and contemporary art is just after I moved here, kind of learning what they are and stuff like that. But I wasn't informed like what I never knew what why was Cezanne was modern art, stuff like that. Kind of I have to learn everything from like sort of like the beginning. Ethiopian art has like had influence with like socialist realism was a common form of art, lots of murals. So that was like my earliest like exposure to art, like seeing this like you said, like workers doing work, and usually the kind of propaganda like images used, but very figurative, and workers and stuff like that, kind of public art. That was, I would say, my one of my first like influences. There was time also in like and elementary school, I think 8th grade or something. I've done also paintings on the school, like murals, just painting like Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, stuff like that, kind of science text. So yeah, mural was like my first, in a way, exposure to work, but it wasn't like art as fine art history. It wasn't my. That was something I got introduced after I came to the States.
Yeah. Julia says, great presentation. I'm a big fan. I much look forward to seeing the show tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow, Julia.
Yeah, that's my friend as well. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Carlton also says, the Play-Doh piece is masterly. Other previous works of yours in that medium? I think we might have answered that.
Yeah, no, there's not. That was your first.
Yeah, the first time. Never used it before.
Audience, if you are inspired to comment or ask any more questions, we have a few more minutes. Or not. I mean, here's the other thing. We're going to leave this up for the duration of the exhibition, so people can continue to come to this page and listen. And we'll leave the chat open so that if any of you think of questions, you can return and ask them. And Ezra, if you want to, you can answer via chat rather than as part of the Q&A that's on the video.
Great, sounds great.
I think something else happened.
Oh, interesting. There's a question from Aina. Thinking of your interest in space travel movies and TV shows, do you think of your work as being Afrofuturist or Afro-surrealist at all?
I'm not sure. I mean, I never thought about it that way. But I could see how it could be perceived that way because I have like African origin. I mean, I have another recent work also. Some other curator referred me to Afrofuturistic idea. I think it's just by default, but I don't really think specifically. I don't think of like a frame or something like that. I'm just if I see something really inspire me, I just I try to investigate, explore it, and see where it goes. But yeah, but I'm an African origin. So I could see how that's connected to. But I think it's the idea of like Afrofuturism is actually it's American idea, right? I think it's from American idea. I don't know if it's from. I don't think it's originates from African countries. So yeah, I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, and Tara, I love how the amorphous interlude forms in darkness become language themselves. Can't wait to see it in person. We're
Thank
waiting
you.
Be waiting for you, Tara.
Okay.
Maybe we
Is
can
there
wrap it
anything
up.
else you'd like to say that somehow
No.
we maybe you felt was important about the works in this show, or your general practice that somehow wasn't addressed? Otherwise, we don't want to belabor everything. We like to leave some mystery in your work. But if there's just something crucial that somehow wasn't, mentioned, that, or that you thought, oh, I should have said something, we have some more minutes if you want to say something else.
Thanks so much. I think I've said well what I was thinking. Yeah, it's sometimes I'm like, wait, I should have said this. I come up with something later on, but yeah, at the moment I don't have anything I can think of. I think your questions were really helpful for me to reflect upon.
And everyone, stay tuned for a closing of the exhibition that we just decided to.
We're going to do a closing
present.
event. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've been dealing with this strange reopening in New York. When we reopened, we had a long, prolonged 8-hour opening. And we'll see what's going on. But if it still seems safe, we'll have, a more concentrated closing event so that you can actually have more interaction with more people at the same time rather than 2 people per hour, as we had kind of staggered it for the opening. All right, audience, we're going to give you like a few more seconds if you want to post something. Otherwise, we'll post it and Ezra can answer, and written later. And we really appreciate everyone showing up, and apologies to people who had hoped to come by the gallery tonight. It doesn't seem like any of this storm has manifested itself here, but given last week's flooding of the subways and everything, we didn't want to trap people or force people, or even you or ourselves actually, to potentially be trapped and not be able to get home. So
Well, thank you so much, Ezra.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you everyone who joined tonight. Thanks, and see you at the gallery for the show before it closes on August 7th.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone. I appreciate it for joining in. Take care. Have a good night.
bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.
Ciao.